Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Pratiksha Bhadoria, and I, with my colleague Dhiren sir at Invent Model, so we are here to discuss more topics on Informatica MDM Cloud SaaS. So, can we move on to the next slide? So, the agenda for today's discussion is explain all the steps involved in creating the mapping, task and task flow in CDI, and integrate this with MDM Cloud SaaS. Yeah, this is the same which we have to, yeah. So to integrate data with Informatica MDM Cloud SaaS using Informatica Cloud Data Integration, that is the CDI application, we have to create the mappings, task and task flow, and then we have to configure them for MDM SaaS integration, which has different steps, including connections, mapping the data, and setting up task execution. So, in the first step of mapping creation, we have to analyze source and target. We have to first understand that the data structures, the format, and the transformation that are required for moving data from source system to the MDM cloud. Because we can have any kind of data into the source system. So, first thing is we have to identify how the data needs to be moved to MDM cloud. Second step is we have to create the source and target connections. Now we have to establish the connection to our source system and MDM Cloud SaaS. The third step is design the mapping. So here we have to design the mapping using CDI. CDI is that we have told cloud data integration. So CDI mapping designer is used to define the data flow between source and target objects. We have to map the source field to the target field, and then we have to handle also the data transformation that are needed, because sometimes we there is a requirement that we have to handle the data transformation, for example splitting, concatenating, and standardizing, and there can be many more examples. Then we have to use these transformation to clean and validate the data. Same thing that we used to do for cleansing and validating the data. Next step is define the data validation rules. So we have to implement the rules that ensures the data quality and consistency. Data validation rules we have done in on-prem also. So here also we have to implement the rules that ensure the data quality and consistency. Next step is test the mapping. So after performing all these steps, we have to test the mapping whether it is working fine or not. So we have to thoroughly test the mapping to ensure that the data that flows is flowing correctly and all the transformations are accurate. Yes. So like we can see in the screenshot, it's a bit blurry, but we can see important steps. We have a source and then we have a target in the mapping that is being shown, and in middle of the source and target we have expression. So here expression basically is used for any validation, cleaning, transformation. So these are the steps that we define in expression. And source has the source data, and target has basically uh, where we want to uh, where we want to transform the data, and then that data should go into this target. It can have any name. Yes. And then we can see validation also written in the right. So in the top right validation is written. So we have to first check the validation also, and after checking the validation we have to test the mapping, this mapping that we have created. And this is all done using CDI, that is cloud data integration. Yeah. Now the second step is mapping the task creation. So what involves the mapping of the task creation? First, it creates a mapping task. So after designing the mapping, we have to create a mapping task to orchestrate the execution of the mapping. Basically, like we have already created the mapping, but here we have to create a task related to the mapping, which will perform the further operations. So this is what it is trying to say. Second is configure runtime environment. So here we have to select the runtime environment where the mapping task will execute, like the task that we will be creating. So it needs a runtime environment where it will be executed. Third is configure runtime properties. So we have to set certain parameters, we have to set certain properties, schedules for this task that will run, right? Next is define input parameters. So we have to define any input parameter that the mapping task may require. So it is not necessary it would require, but we have to check there are certain time, any condition where it may require the input parameter. Next is create target. So after actually performing all of the above steps, now we have to create a target. So target is the object. Select a target object from the list or create a new target. There is a list given. So out of which we can select the target, inbuilt target, or we can create a new target. Next is define schedule. So now at the end, we have to configure the schedule for the mapping task. So this is how the process is of mapping task creation, and schedule is also like if needed, then we can configure, else we are good to go. Yes. Can we move on to the next slide? Yes. So I'll invite Dhiren sir for the explanation of the slide.
Yeah, thanks to teacher. So the task flow creations. So in this we will create the task flow. So use the CDI task flow designer to create the task flow that orchestrate the execution of a multiple tasks, including mapping tasks. So in the previous step, we created the task which is associated with session task, right? And then here we are basically creating the workflow. So we are associating that session task in the workflow so that we can use this for the execution. So it's like we can add the task, add data task steps. To add the data task steps to the task flow, linking them to the mapping task you created. So previously we had created a like session task. Now we are mapping those in the workflow. So there will be start and then there will be mapping task which will have the actual mapping details, and then it will be connected with other sub steps, like if there are any decision task and all those things, that also we can involve here, and then at the end we can end this process. And then so we can add the decision steps also. Suppose if you want to have some decision kind of activity, for example, you want to execute something or based on the success or failure of the previous task, you want to perform some other steps or other task you want to perform. So we can use this decision making things, and like based on the success, maybe we can send the email to the users on the statics of the executions of the workflow, uh, or I can also means execute another mapping after this. So based on the requirement, this we can create. So configure task flow steps in the data task step property. Select the task from the list of existing tasks that you want to add to the task flow. And then go on to the next slide. Okay, so here we have shown the screenshot of one simple example how the this workflow will look like. So we have a start and then we have end here, and then in between we have this session task. So this session task includes the mapping which we had created earlier, and this will have all the mapping details. It will have source and target connections, and means source and target connections. So also it will have a target table or target system names where we want to send that extracted data, and at the end it will be like when so basically this is the one we can schedule it, and later this can be integrated in the MDM. So here one more thing is there, we need to some instance ID we need to configure here, which will be used in the cloud SaaS. Okay, so now the integration of the workflow in the MDM Cloud SaaS integration, that is called ingress job. So how to set up the ingress job? So then we need to configure MDM connections, ensure that the connections to the MDM Cloud SaaS are correctly configured within the CDI environment. Then map data to MDM objects, ensure that the mappings correctly map data from source system to the appropriate MDM object. So we need to ensure that like the source and target data like target fields are mapped properly, so that we can move the data properly. Test MDM integration. Thoroughly test the integrations to ensure that the data is loaded into the MDM cloud SaaS correctly. Then we can regularly monitor the integration process and make any necessary adjustments. So means like here also based on that instance ID, means like it will be we can track that job from the CDI to here. So if because this is needed because this job can be triggered from any of the place, because we have configured this in the MDM cloud, right? And if someone triggered that in the CDI itself, how we can track that? So for that reason, there is an instance ID which can be created to reference them from here. So this is one typical screenshot where we have that ingress job configured. So we need to choose that ingress job and then provide those mapping and all those things here, and then it will be set up in the cloud SaaS. Uh, thank you. Thank you. That's all we have.
So are we done? Is it completed?
Yes.
Okay, let me stop the recording.